Welcome to Creative Piecemeal Podcast, a podcast for creatives. I'm your host, Tammy Takeishi. Join me for compelling conversations with artists, actors, authors, musicians, and other creatives about the impact of the creative and fine arts in their lives and our ever-changing world. Thank you for listening. Hello, welcome to another episode of Creative Piecemeal Podcast. I'm your host, Tammy Takeishi. Today, I am joined by Heather Edwards. She is the co-founder of the women-led nonprofit Ahha Broadway Incorporated, which provides arts education programming to underserved children, senior citizens, and veterans. She's trained as a classical pianist and graduated from Berklee College of Music. If you live on the East Coast, you may be familiar with her work, but for many others, there was recently a Humans of New York post that had gone viral thanks to her husband, Mark, who was extolling her wonderful virtues and talents about Ahha Broadway and everything that Heather does for the community. And I'm so lucky to have her on the show to talk about all things creative and to get to know her a little bit more. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We're going to get started with who or what inspired you to go into the creative arts.
Well, when I was about 6 years old, my parents brought home a piano and I wanted to play a song. And so I went over to the piano, and of course that didn't happen because I didn't know how to play the piano. So they said, well, you need to sign up for piano lessons. And my dad was a high school math teacher. And so he asked his students, please raise your hand if you have a piano teacher and if you like them, because I'm trying to find one for my daughter. And someone raised their hand and she said, well, my mother is a piano teacher and I like her. So that's how we found my piano teacher, who I was with my entire life and consider family. And so I went and I did my piano lesson and I came back home and I tried to play the song and I was like, oh, it didn't work. And my parents said, well, you've got to take more than one. So that's how it happened. And then 4 months later, I gave my first recital, and the applause and the buzz indicated that something went really right, and I really loved it. And I found that it just came kind of naturally for me. And I've always loved music and acting and dancing. I loved pretending to give talk shows in my bedroom at night when I couldn't sleep, all that kind of stuff. So I've always had a good imagination, I think, and just loved the arts. So I was lucky. I didn't know that kids, when you say, what do you want to be when you grow up, that it was going to change for most people every year and through their adulthood and what have you. I thought everyone really knew. So when people would say, what do you want to be when you grow up? I knew, and that was really lucky. I just kept honing my craft, and as I got older, I was able to add in dance lessons and acting lessons because my parents said, well, you just need to pick one to focus on. So that was the piano, because that's what I knew in my heart and in my fingers, which was best. Fast forward, and I started getting job offers to either company or musical direct or work with children in some capacity in the arts, musical theater most of the time, but some children's choirs, vocal lessons. So that became kind of, I guess you would say, my day job that I, first of all, enjoyed the best. I've done other jobs in the past, as most people have. You know, you find your way through life and you have to subsidize your income, what have you. Thank goodness I was good at things, so I was able to, but being creative and being with kids and helping people realize their potential and discover things within themselves and helping them find confidence and creativity, that's just magical to me. And children especially come up with the wackiest things, and they're funny, and seeing them have those moments of surprise where like, oh my gosh, I can do it. That's just great. It's just wonderful to see. And theater games, that's a perfect place to hear them improvise and use their imagination and hear the wacky tales that they come up with. So it's a lot of fun.
That's wonderful. And how did you decide on Ahha Broadway? Like, what brought you to that moment in your life?
I had worked for other companies, and there were always elements that I felt were either missing or uncomfortable or just more important. And so when the pandemic came around, I had been working with a partner, and we had thought about what can we do, and started to form something as an aside, just to fill in the gaps. And then the pandemic happened, everyone was laid off from all of their work, theater closed, performances were not happening. So it became full time. And of course, we were supposed to launch April 2020. So great timing. We pivoted to virtual, and I personally knew that I wanted it to be for the community, for the children, for the seniors, for the veterans. And the seniors and veterans really came about more during the pandemic because senior centers and veteran centers were closed. So a lot of people, they didn't have access to community, and a lot of people lived by themselves, or if they lived in a senior center or assisted living, or a lot of them were quarantined to their rooms. So there just wasn't availability, and it turned out to be such a blessing. The silver lining, Zoom. Thank you, Zoom. Because then we were all able to communicate even past our local communities and beyond, and, the country, the world, etc. I wanted to have something that was about people, not the almighty dollar. Of course, we want to be able to make a living and things like that, and it takes money to put on programming and to buy costumes and do all of those good things. But my focus was the people, the children. And I also, on the other side of the coin, because I've been an administrator and I've been an artist and I've also been a student, so I feel it's a very well-rounded, I have a very full interpretation of what's necessary from all sides. So I wanted people to be able to work in a place as well, because we have teaching artists. And I wanted them to come to a job where not only were they teaching and using their skills and imparting their wisdom, but where they were like, I can't wait to go to work. My ideas are respected. My creativity is incorporated into the programming. They listen. They care. If I have a problem, I can go to someone and they don't say, well, you didn't hear about my day and how bad it was. Or, oh, yeah, I'll get to that. Or, oh, yeah, I'll call that school principal. We'll see what we can do. And then leave them hanging. I didn't want a situation like that. I wanted someone to love 100% their job. Of course, everyone has a bad day, and I can't guarantee, every single second of every single day and every single student's going to be like the best. But I want at least those teaching artists to know that they're in a safe, fun, respectful environment, and they can participate with their own ideas. It's not just a you do this and move on kind of a thing.
Yeah, and that's so important, not just for people in the creative fields, but for anyone to feel respected in their jobs.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's wonderful that you're creating that environment.
I'm doing my best. I really hope so, yes.
Yeah. For people who want to get involved with Ahha Broadway, whether it's via teaching or being a student, how do they go about doing that?
Well, they can follow us on social media. We are on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and it's at Ahha Broadway, which is AHHA Broadway, BROADWAY. Or they can go to our website, which is www.ahhabroadway.org, O-R-G. We are also on LinkedIn. Someday we will have a TikTok. We do have an account, but there's nothing there yet because we haven't really had in-person opportunities because of the pandemic. So once we're back in person 100% and things are back to some semblance of normalcy, we will be adding TikToks with classroom participants who, showing off their skills and the fun times that we have and things like that. So looking forward to that and showing more of what we do live, because we've got lots of virtual, but you can only look at so many Zoom screens. All the little Brady Bunch boxes, so I'm looking forward to that.
Great. What are some goals that you have for the new year?
My goals are so expansive. I just want to reach as many people as possible, want to develop more programming, get into schools, get into senior centers and veteran centers, do performances for folks who don't normally have access to live theater, provide technology to the people that don't have it. That's one of the biggest things that happened during the pandemic, obviously, being virtual, was that a lot of people it's just assumed that you've got the latest technology, a phone, a computer, great Wi-Fi. People don't. If they have access, they may not even know how to use it to the degree that they need to. So we are trying to get some computers into the hands of children in schools, and connectivity through Wi-Fi, better Wi-Fi services, because we do have students who are in shelters, low-income housing, where everyone's on the same signal, if there is even one. And so trying to do their homework, just their homework, is a task. Many of them have to go to a public station, maybe in a Starbucks, and to have to leave your home. And a lot of people have two jobs, so they can't let their child go find another place to go, or maybe their grandparents are their caretakers and they're not really tech savvy. Or in some of the senior centers, we have found that the seniors have a little bit of difficulty navigating, because technology is always updating, so it's not always what you learned. It's evolving, and even the volume button isn't where it used to be, or so things like that. Or they're afraid of handing out their emails for Zooms, of being scammed or being hacked or having Zoom bombers. So educating people on how to use their tech, but having that provided as well, so they have access, not just for our programming, but to connect or to do schoolwork or what have you. So that's just something really important that is just assumed. There's this assumption in society that everyone's tech savvy and has the latest, greatest. And so it's really kind of unnerving. It makes me feel really bad, because I've seen people struggle, and it's stressful for them, and can't be healthy. That stress level of trying to do what you need to do, and if you don't have someone that can help you on hand, it can be really hard.
Yeah, it sounds like the technology is a subject really close to your heart.
It's a learning curve, so it's something that I can relate to, and I don't want I'm one of those people. I don't want people to go through difficulty. I want it to be as easy and stress-free as possible. So if we can help with that, that's what I want to do.
Sounds like a lot of really great goals for the new year.
Oh yeah, that's what I told you. It's a long list.
That's okay though. Aim high, aim high. How are things going with Ahha Broadway after the viral success of the Humans of New York post?
Oh my gosh. Humans of New York, and my husband's interview with them. First of all, the fact that he did that, and he actually, that was a surprise. I didn't know that he had that. In fact, one day he said he had to go take care of something, but it was not the norm. So I was like, oh, okay, all right. And he was kind of dressed nicely, and it's the pandemic. I'm like, you don't have any business meetings in person, do you? I don't know, so, but I brushed it up. I was busy, so whatever. And then, strangely enough, this is a story I haven't really told anybody. About 2 weeks before that post, our website was hacked. Someone was trying to run stolen credit cards through.
Oh no.
So one night, my phone was just like, and I was getting literally thousands of notifications for about 3 days. And I was dealing with the company and having to do stuff. And so I was coming home I'd just finished teaching, and my phone started doing it again about 2 weeks later. I was like, no, please, no. I thought we had blocked that and gotten higher security and done all the things that you have to do. And oh my gosh. But I was on the subway, so I couldn't really see anything because the connectivity, again, wasn't that great. So I get home and I walk in the door, and Mark says, hey, come have a seat next to me. I have something to tell you. And I was saying, yeah, I have something to tell you too, because I was going to tell him I was probably being hacked again. And he said, so let me show you something. And he showed me the article. I was like, what? And it was one of those moments where I was like, do I laugh? Do I cry? I mean, it was so moving. I couldn't believe that he took his moments, and it's even making me a little bit choked up right now, but I couldn't believe that he took his moment and mentioned our mission and the work that I'm doing. And I mean, that's who he is, though. He's just such oh my gosh, to say he has a good soul and a good heart and he's loving and caring and thoughtful and selfless, like that's so like not even big enough words. If you to amplify that times infinity, you know. But that was just amazing. And then I knew when I looked at when I finally did open up the emails and I saw that those transactions were real, not hackers. I was like, and oh my gosh, because I've been working, to plan. I don't know if people realize to plan a fundraiser is a ton of work. I mean, there's so much to navigate, live, virtual, social media, publicizing it. In the times that we live in, it's not the norm. So what might have worked 2 years ago may not really work now. So there's those components, and then once you're in it, you're doing it, and you don't want to drive people nuts and push them away, so it becomes white noise, but you need the engagement, and there's just so much. And when you care about your fundraiser, I mean, I'm not saying can we raise money for Heather to have a pony. We're doing something that I really feel is super important, that, the children are our future. I know that's cliche, but they are. And to not give them the things that they need, the tools that they need, the support that they need, I mean, that's just, when I wasn't seeing engagement, I was like, how can you not give children what they need? I was like, come on, people, you're buying 4 cups of coffee a day. Just give me the value of one of those cups. If everyone gave me that $5 that they spent on that, we'd be in pretty good shape, So I was getting frustrated, and I was taking it personally. I was like, what is it that I'm doing wrong? What else can I do? And so when the Humans of New York and Brandon stepped in to interview Mark, and then Mark did what he did, that was kind of the extra push and the extra outreach and amplification that we needed. I mean, my spirits were definitely lifted 1,000,000%, because I was getting pretty down in the dumps. I'm not gonna lie. I did have a few tears were shed. I will admit that, because I was getting concerned, and time was running out. Well, time had run out, because December 31st was the end of that campaign. Technically, thank goodness I didn't shut it off. Because yes, there are good people in the world. There are people who care. There are people who were supportive. And the thing is it wasn't just monetary donations. There were donations of time, of effort, because people were taking the time to reach out and give me words of encouragement, they said, I hope you don't mind my unsolicited advice. But I was like, no, I'll take it. Because I'm not the be all end all perfect, know what to do. I will take advice. I'm still learning too. I think you learn until the day that you're not on this planet anymore. There's always something to learn, always. And even if it's not advice that's taken to the T, there's always a nugget that you can, glean from it. But also people that wanted to volunteer, people that said, how can I get involved as a board member, or how can I introduce you to someone that can help you? What is it that you need, et cetera, et cetera. So it was just amazing. And oh gosh. And then people were spreading the word. And that's the thing, word of mouth is so much better than any paid advertisement. Because if you obviously pay for an advertisement, people are like, oh, you're biased, and it benefits you, and et cetera. So the Humans of New York has just been amazing. And I hope I do them proud, and I aim not to let them down, and things are going. I'm not sitting on my laurels. I'm, from the second that it started, that's been fueling the fire, charging my batteries, going. So yes, it's been just incredible. And I'm very grateful. To say again that I'm very grateful, such an understatement. It's just, my heart is so full, and I'm so happy that so many people have been there for me, and they're strangers. It's just, whew.
Yeah, I remember seeing that post and several other posts similar that were just very inspiring that week from Humans of New York. And I think people want to rally behind communities such as yours and people such as you who are doing such wonderful, good for the soul, good for the heart work.
Well, that's the thing too, is I think people connected with each other through that as well, reading each other's comments. one thing I did notice, which with social media, I didn't see any real negativity or haters or, nonsense. I hope that there isn't any. I hope that it wasn't that I just missed it. I noticed that it was pretty darn good and everyone was being really kind to each other. So I was like, how cool is that?
Yeah.
Just wonderful. Just wonderful.
And listeners, I know you can't tell, but Heather is just lit up and glowing talking about Ahha Broadway and being able to help her community. So if you have a chance, when you're done listening to this wonderful interview, go to the show notes, give them a shout out, make a donation, whatever that you can do to help spread the joy that she does. Heather, we're going to switch gears and sort of dig into a little more about who you are.
Okay.
All right. So what is a piece of advice that you received in your industry that you've really stuck to and absolutely love?
The biggest piece of advice is never give up. Even in those moments where you feel it's hopeless or you're banging your head against the wall or it's just not moving. I have to admit, I'm going to tell people something about me, that I am patient with everyone, pretty much everyone, I think, but myself. That's the thing that's the hardest for me, is I want to accomplish stuff yesterday. That's something that's kind of tricky for me, which is part of my answer about not giving up, because I'm so impatient with myself. I want to get it done. I don't want to have something on the to-do list because I don't know what's going to be on my plate tomorrow. So I need to finish my to-do list today. Otherwise, it's just going to pile up. Or there may be a fire to put out tomorrow that I don't know about. So don't leave that waiting, because it may get pushed to the corner. And I'm not someone that's going to forget to do it, but I just want to make sure that all my T's are crossed, my I's are dotted, and I've given everything the attention that it needs. So I think the best advice, even though it's hard to follow, I will admit it, is just don't give up. I know myself, I'm not a quitter, but there are those moments of frustration or self-doubt. I have to have that little voice saying, don't give up, don't give up.
And speaking of not giving up, do you feel like your life in the creative arts has turned out the way you imagined?
Oh gosh, no. Not even. You have all these dreams as a kid. It's so funny. When you're younger, you say, well, by this I'm going to accomplish, this age I'm going to do this, and by that age I'm going to do this, and my life is planned out that way. And life, you don't get to plan that way. Adults know that, I think. Life is what happens while you're busy planning. So things have changed, obviously. Goals that I have set, some of them happened when I wanted, some of them happened in different ways, but they did happen. Some of them I'm still working towards. Some of them I have to say, well, I did what I could, but there are other people or other factors that I don't have control of. I can only control what I do. So maybe it's not going to happen. Those are things that I think have changed over time a little bit. I think that there's a lot more open-mindedness and diversity, and ageism is not as bad, but there's still a lot of work to be done in the industry, in performing arts especially. I mean, I know that every industry has issues, but the performing arts image is a big deal. So there are things obviously that changed or didn't happen the way that I wanted, and there are many that did happen. So I think my grandmother says everything turned out for the best. And my mother said, and doesn't that drive you nuts? When you hear that and when you're in a moment of stress and someone says to you, don't worry, everything turns out for the best. And you're like, don't say that. But things are, I think they do turn out the way that they're meant to be. And you may not understand it in the moment. And that is huge. I have to say, I have definitely witnessed that in the moment I may not like or agree with the way things are going, but 5 years down the road, or 10 down the road, something happens where you're like, oh, that's why that happened, because it had to be in place for this to happen, or I learned this lesson from it being that way, or what have you. So, yes, you may not always know it, but it does present itself later.
Very true. We're not always able to see how the puzzle pieces fit together, but positives and the negatives really shape us to be able to move forward and do some amazing things. We're going to backtrack a little bit. You've, of course, played piano since you were very young, but if you could play any other instrument, what would it be?
I would love to be able to play the drums and the saxophone, but the drums would come first. Oh, well, also guitar. I'm a terrible guitar player. I wouldn't even say calling me a guitar player is accurate. I would love those three. I mean, they're very different instruments: percussion, brass, and a stringed instrument. So there you go on that too. I'm one of those people. If you ask me, name one, I can't. I can never do just one. I'm such a cheater on that. But it's true. They're so different. It's hard to pick one. I did try to play the clarinet when I was, I think, in fourth grade, but I had such terrible allergies that I spent more time coughing. And so the teacher said, it's just not going to work, because I just had such trouble with breathing and maintaining, time through the lesson. I spent more time coughing, so it wasn't working out. So I touched on that for a few months, but that was really it.
Who's one of your favorite composers, either to play or to listen to?
Oh my goodness. If you broke it down into genre, maybe that would be a little bit easier. But I guess if I had to pick, I would say Rachmaninoff. I love so many things, Scarlatti, but Mozart, obviously. I mean, there's so many classical. I love the big pieces. I mean, those people must have had the longest fingers too. Their hand spans must have been just incredible. I believe there's power in playing those pieces. Music for me is, I mean, for most people, I know it's a very emotional thing. And music is great for mental health and emotional wellness, and it's just such a deep and personal thing. But I feel their music is also very show-offy. But also Prokofiev, a lot of his music is very heavy. So if you're in a bad mood, instead of, people say, I want to go punch a wall. Well, play some Prokofiev, because it's and it's so, you can put a lot of aggression into that, but it's not going to damage anything. But it's great. It's a great emotional outlet. But yes, I cheated again. I just named a whole bunch of people. But yes, there you go. That's my answer.
It's a good group of people, though. This one might actually be a harder question. If you could be any fictional character, who would you be?
This is kind of probably not what you're going to expect me to say, but I've always wanted to play a vampire.
Cool.
I love vampire movies. I don't know why, but I used to joke I'd be a vegetarian vampire, because that whole blood part, no. But I love the mysteriousness of it all, not the macabre part of it. I don't know how to describe why. I know that's so odd, but the books and the movies, Bram Stoker's Dracula, I've read that a couple times. There's just such a mysteriousness to it, and in the movies, I love the costumes, the vintage.
Well, you can't go wrong with a cape, right?
Yes. There you go.
Maybe that's the big draw.
And vampire movies, a lot of the times, are set in historical settings and period pieces, and all those, like I said, the sets and the costumes are very, I think I'm drawn to that. But also to play Lena Lamont singing in the rain. I think that would be really fun. Yeah, the vampire thing, I think, I don't know. It's so strange, I know.
It's all good, though. Like, when I ask that question, I get such varied answers, and I love it. I love hearing the creativity come out of that. What is a favorite memory or a funny story about your time working with Ahha Broadway so far?
The summer program that we did in July 2021, that was the first in-person program that we had since the pandemic. And when you have a summer musical theater camp, in my experience, the kids come together and they're like, I wonder how many friends I'm going to have. I wonder if they like what I like. They kind of check each other out. They may kind of break off into cliques. These kids, having been in quarantine for so long in New York City, I don't think people realize New York City, I think, experienced quarantine in a much different way than a lot of the rest of the country or world, perhaps. Obviously, this is just speculation, so don't hold me to it. But because we're in apartments and we don't have cars to go jump in, a lot of people don't have cars to go jump in and go for a ride. We have public transportation, so the subway, maybe not the safest during a quarantine, obviously. And children who don't have siblings were by themselves. They didn't really have someone to play with. I think that kids here were hit harder and in a different way. And the virtual learning, I just think that they don't have a backyard to go out and play. And so I think there's a lot of things that New York went through differently than a lot of other people. So anyhow, when we came to our summer camp, these kids sat down and never stopped talking. And as infuriating as it could be when you're like, I'm trying to teach you your lines, shh, it was hilarious because the things that they would talk about and the excitement in their every being, every atom, just they were goofy and silly and funny. And the things that there was nothing that they didn't discuss. They just needed each other so badly. And it was really fun and sometimes funny because the things that they would be putting so much importance on was just, ridiculous and silly. How children say, well, Batman's better than Superman. No, I'm telling you, Superman's better because, and I'm making that up. But the reasons that they come up for why this is better than that, and it's a fictional story or character or a cartoon, whatever it is, it's just they're funny. And they get so serious and so intense about it. And I'm not saying grown-ups don't do that too, because we do. But that was pretty joyful and hilarious. And the theater games that we would play with them too, the things that they would come up with were wacky. It was just something that I saw that was really important also because I knew when schools opened up again, what they were in for. If we saw that in our 2 weeks and how much importance was put on people being together and in person, I knew that when they were back in school that counselors were going to be really important. Wow, I just made this funny thing into a downer. I apologize, but no, but I just, to see that kind of camaraderie and they didn't break off into cliques, I think that was amazing.
Is there something that you wish you had known when you first started on the creative journey in your life?
Oh, yes. One of the biggest things that I found really no one told me till much later than I needed it was that networking was so critical. I know nowadays because of social media and what have you, networking is a lot more apparent. But when I was in college, no one said every single person you talk to, stay in touch with. Make sure that you make those connections because you never know who you're going to be working with down the line. And I already knew don't burn bridges. I already knew be respectful because you never know who you're going to end up working with. So that was something I knew. I don't think a lot of people do. I wish that everyone were required to take business in music or business in arts or, because they're not, at least when I was going to school. So people would graduate and be like, oh, now what? No one's going to come knock on your door and say, hey, I've got a record deal for you, or hey, be the star of my Broadway show. Networking is so critical. And I went to school with a lot of people that have become extremely successful. In fact, some of them I tutored, like in Counterpoint or some of the music theory classes or things like that. I look back on it now and I was like, oh my goodness, look where they are. I tutored them, and boy, could I use their help because they probably know a lot more people than I do now in certain corners of the industry. So that would be nice to have still, be connected. But now also with texting and email and social media, I think that's a lot easier too.
I definitely think that especially with the music business classes. I know that's something, even when I went to school, they were not in place. But I think at some places now it is a reality just because it's such a changing world and people in the creative fields have to, be their own accountants and be their own promoters and, just really push in ways that we hadn't had to before.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
One last question. What does living a creative life mean to you?
People say, why did you choose such a difficult career? Musician, starving artist, all that kind of thing. And then, during the pandemic, teaching, performing, all of that pretty much went away, and except for on Zoom, but teaching arts on Zoom was also a challenge because of singing with accompaniment wasn't really something that was available right away because of technology. And even after 9/11, everything in New York pretty much went away. I lost all of my work as an artist because people weren't coming as tourists to see Broadway shows. People weren't having parties where they would hire, musicians. People weren't filming TV shows and movies and things like they had been. So they say, well, you chose it. And it's like, I'm kind of not sure if that's true. I think because I know I did other jobs. I was a paralegal. I did HR. I am grateful that I had the capacity to do those things and that I have the parents that I do. My parents are the best in the universe, and I'm sorry everybody else, but they are. They instilled so much in me, and they gave me so many opportunities. And by buying that piano and my discovering, I already loved musicals, and I always knew like I said, I do my talk show in my bedroom at night, interviewing, celebrities that I was imagining. It was always in there. That's just who I am. It's not, maybe I chose it to pursue it in that regard. But I found when I was a paralegal or when I was doing HR, there was something missing. It was painful. It was actually painful because I felt like, what am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing? A year has gone by. When are we going to have this back? Even doing the musical theater summer camp with the kids, when I sat there and played for them live with an amazing drummer and guitar player, oh my gosh, heaven, I'm in heaven. And it was the greatest. And I cannot even tell you in words that kind of like electricity buzzing and full heart. And oh gosh. And the kids were just, with a live band instead of working with tracks. They were just like, whoa, that's so cool. And they would run over the drummer like he was, and the guitar player and pick their brains and be like, can I touch the guitar? What's it like to play that? How long did it take you? I mean, it's just there. My creativity is there, and seeing other people get so excited about that kind of stuff, and seeing how everyone really needed the arts. It really helped. How many people watched and listened to music and film and those broadcasts of live performances that had been filmed, Broadway shows or performances of the past that everyone needed so badly. And that's where Ahha Broadway came in, because arts education is not, there are, I think, 19 states where arts education is not mandatory part of the curriculum. And a lot of times when funding is being cut, arts are the first thing to go. Many children don't have access, so they would have to seek it out, and their parents might not be able to afford it. So we need to keep that going, because a child, think about this. I know that it may not affect people because this is my story, but if my parents hadn't bought that piano, I would not be who I am. Just wouldn't. So, sorry, but to think that kids miss out on that, they may not discover who they can be. It's not just the arts. They just need that well-rounded person who gives that opportunity to them. And if their families can't, if their schools can't, someone's got to step in and give that to them. They deserve it.
And it's so wonderful that you have stepped in and that you're doing that. And it's such a passion in your life.
Yeah. How can you tell? Because I'm crying again. Everyone's going to think I'm this crying person. I really don't cry that often, but it means so much to me that these kids have what they need and that they can be the best that they can be, or at least discover it and find out, God, I'm terrible. I don't want to do that. I don't, it's okay. At least they tried and got the chance, so.
Excellent. Well, Heather, it has been such an honor to have you on the podcast. I hope that you can join me again in the future and give updates, and we'll pick your brain a little bit more. But listen, so listeners, please check out the show notes, donate, check out their shows, check out their camps, and, let's keep that light shining.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to reach people through your podcast. And I really thank you so much. I had a good time talking with you today.
You're very welcome. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Like the show? Have a question? Stop by the Facebook and Instagram pages. Links are in the show notes, or search for Creative Piecemeal Podcast on social media and click follow for all the latest.